Why do the smartest people seem to struggle the most in relationships? Why do those who understand psychology deeply often find themselves trapped in the same toxic patterns they can easily identify in others? And why does everyone tell you to love yourself first, without explaining how systematic trauma makes authentic love nearly impossible? Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher whose works on love and desire were banned by universities and condemned by the church, had the answer. And it wasn't gentle with society's romantic illusions. Here's the sexual liberation manual they didn't want you reading. They told you that love conquers all, that finding the right person will complete you, that your relationship problems are just about communication or compatibility. You believed them. But Schopenhauer discovered something far more disturbing. Most people are psychologically incapable of genuine love or satisfying sex until they heal from systematic trauma designed to keep them emotionally dependent. This isn't just about individual healing. This is about how society deliberately damages your capacity for authentic intimacy and sexual fulfillment to keep you consuming, seeking, and suffering. Every romantic movie, every relationship advice column is designed to maintain your emotional wounds because healed people don't generate profit. Schopenhauer mapped the exact mechanism by which trauma blocks both love and sexual satisfaction. And more dangerously, he documented how to break free from it completely. In 1851, Schopenhauer published his revolutionary analysis of romantic love and sexual desire. Universities immediately suppressed these works, not because they were immoral, but because they exposed how romantic conditioning creates psychological and sexual dependency. The church condemned his writings because he'd revealed how religious institutions use guilt and shame about sexuality to maintain control over people's most intimate experiences. He showed that sexual repression wasn't about morality, it was about power. But the real reason for suppression was more sinister. Schopenhauer had reverse-engineered how society systematically traumatizes people to prevent them from achieving the psychological independence required for both genuine love and satisfying sexual experiences. All love is based on illusion, Schopenhauer wrote, but this wasn't cynicism, it was precision. He'd identified that what most people call love is actually trauma bonding disguised as spiritual connection. The systematic trauma begins in childhood. Conditional love from parents teaches you that affection must be earned through performance. You learn that your natural desires are shameful. You develop the belief that you must be someone else to be worthy of love. By adulthood, most people are so psychologically damaged that they can't distinguish between genuine intimacy and familiar dysfunction. They mistake intensity for connection, possessiveness for love, and sexual obsession for passionate romance. Schopenhauer mapped how trauma creates three states that trap people in destructive relationship and sexual cycles. Desperate sexual wanting. You crave someone who reminds you of your original wound. This isn't attraction, it's your psyche trying to heal childhood trauma through adult sexuality. The more unavailable or challenging the person, the more intensely you desire them sexually. Temporary sexual satisfaction. You achieve the sexual conquest or relationship, but instead of fulfillment, you feel empty or immediately start craving someone else. This is because you were never actually seeking that person, you were seeking healing for wounds they can't possibly heal. Sexual and emotional boredom. Once the intensity fades, you feel trapped or restless. Your trauma starts seeking new sources of familiar sexual tension. You either sabotage the stable relationship or start craving someone who recreates your original pain patterns. Here's what Schopenhauer discovered that modern psychology still refuses to acknowledge. People with unhealed trauma are magnetically attracted to sexual partners who will recreate their original wounds. This isn't accident, it's how the psyche attempts to master unresolved pain through sexual experiences. If you were emotionally neglected as a child, you'll find yourself intensely sexually attracted to emotionally unavailable adults. If you experienced conditional love, you'll seek sexual partners who withhold intimacy until you perform correctly. If you were abandoned, you'll chase people sexually who are likely to leave. The cruel genius of this system is that trauma-bonded sexual attraction feels more intense than healthy attraction. The obsession, the sexual chemistry, the feeling that this person is your sexual soulmate. All of this is actually your damaged nervous system recognizing familiar patterns of pain and trying to heal them through sexual connection. Schopenhauer understood that unhealed trauma creates what he called erotic fragmentation, the inability to integrate emotional vulnerability with sexual desire. This manifests in several ways. Sexual dissociation. You can have physical sex but can't be emotionally present during it. Part of your psyche disconnects to protect you from the vulnerability that true sexual intimacy requires. Attraction to unavailability. You're most sexually aroused by people who are emotionally distant, already taken, or likely to reject you. Healthy, available people seem boring sexually because they don't activate your trauma patterns. Performance anxiety. You become so focused on being sexually adequate that you can't surrender to the experience. This creates a feedback loop where sexual anxiety prevents the very vulnerability that creates satisfying sex. Orgasmic difficulties. Many people struggle to climax not because of physical issues, but because orgasm requires a complete surrender of control that feels too dangerous to their traumatized nervous system. Modern institutions profit massively from keeping people sexually frustrated and emotionally dependent. The porn industry generates $97 billion annually by providing sexual stimulation that requires no vulnerability, teaching people to sexualize unavailability and performance rather than intimacy. The therapy industry generates billions by treating symptoms of sexual and romantic dysfunction rather than teaching people how to heal the trauma that creates it. Religious institutions maintain control by teaching that sexual desire itself is sinful, creating internal conflict that prevents people from integrating their sexuality with their spiritual development. If you've ever found yourself sexually obsessed with someone who treated you poorly, or sexually bored in healthy relationships, then subscribe, because what I'm about to reveal about how to break free from trauma-bonded sexuality and experience genuine erotic liberation gets much more practical, and they don't want you accessing this power. Share this video now, before they classify it as adult content and bury it completely. The first step to sexual and romantic liberation is recognizing your specific trauma patterns. Schopenhauer believed that most people are unconsciously recreating their earliest wounds through their sexual and romantic choices. The unavailability pattern. If you're consistently attracted to people who are emotionally distant, already in relationships, or obviously wrong for you, this indicates early abandonment or neglect trauma. Your nervous system learned that love equals chasing someone who might leave. The performance pattern. If you feel constant pressure to be sexually perfect, funnier, more attractive, or more successful to maintain someone's interest, this indicates conditional love trauma. You learned that affection must be earned through being exceptional. The intensity pattern. If healthy, stable people seem boring while chaotic, dramatic people seem passionate, this indicates trauma bonding. Your nervous system confuses stress chemicals with love chemicals. The control pattern. If you need to be dominant or submissive in extreme ways sexually, or if you can't enjoy sex unless there's some element of power play, this often indicates childhood powerlessness trauma trying to resolve itself through sexual control. Schopenhauer advocated for periods of conscious celibacy, not sexual repression, but intentional abstinence to break unconscious sexual patterns. This isn't about denying your sexuality, but about reclaiming conscious choice over your sexual responses. During conscious celibacy, you observe your sexual cravings without acting on them. You notice who you fantasize about and why. You identify the emotional states that trigger sexual compulsions. You learn to distinguish between authentic sexual desire and trauma-driven sexual obsession. Most people are so addicted to sexual stimulation, whether through actual sex, masturbation, or sexual fantasy, that they never develop the capacity to choose their sexual responses consciously. Conscious celibacy breaks this unconscious cycle. Schopenhauer was influenced by Eastern philosophy, which teaches that sexual energy is spiritual energy. Instead of suppressing sexual desire or compulsively acting on it, you can learn to feel sexual arousal as pure energy, without needing to direct it toward any particular person or outcome. This practice involves allowing yourself to feel sexually aroused while meditating, without touching yourself or fantasizing about anyone specific. You simply feel the energy of arousal as sensation in your body. This breaks the automatic connection between sexual arousal and compulsive sexual behavior. Over time, this practice teaches you that you can feel sexually powerful and satisfied, without needing another person to validate or satisfy you. This is the foundation of what Schopenhauer called erotic sovereignty, sexual independence. That makes you magnetically attractive to others. Once you understand your trauma patterns, you can begin choosing sexual and romantic partners consciously rather than unconsciously. This requires developing attraction to people who don't activate your trauma responses, which initially feels boring or wrong. Healthy attraction feels different from trauma-bonded attraction. It's calmer, more grounded, less obsessive. Instead of intense sexual chemistry based on familiar dysfunction, you develop what Schopenhauer called erotic compatibility. Sexual attraction based on actual emotional and physical compatibility rather than trauma resonance. This doesn't mean settling for someone you're not attracted to. It means retraining your nervous system to find emotional availability, consistency, and genuine care sexually attractive instead of just finding familiar trauma patterns arousing. Schopenhauer understood that the deepest sexual satisfaction comes from the ability to be completely vulnerable during intimate moments. But trauma makes vulnerability feel dangerous, so most people either avoid it entirely or fake it. True erotic vulnerability means allowing your partner to see your authentic reactions, your real desires, your genuine emotions during sex. It means asking for what you actually want instead of performing what you think they want. It means allowing yourself to make sounds, move naturally, and be present with whatever you're feeling. This level of vulnerability can only happen when you've healed enough trauma to trust that showing your authentic self won't result in abandonment, rejection, or harm. Many people mistake sexual codependency for passionate love. Sexual codependency involves needing your partner's sexual desire to feel worthy, using sex to regulate your partner's emotions, or feeling responsible for your partner's sexual satisfaction at the expense of your own. Sexual independence means enjoying your partner's desire without depending on it for self-worth. It means taking responsibility for your own sexual satisfaction while caring about your partner's pleasure. It means being able to say no to sexual experiences that don't feel authentic to you, even if it disappoints your partner. This creates what Schopenhauer called erotic authenticity sexual expressions that come from your genuine desires rather than from fear, obligation, or the need to control your partner's emotions. Most people with sexual trauma have either rigid sexual boundaries, complete sexual shutdown, or no sexual boundaries, sexual people-pleasing. Healthy sexuality requires flexible boundaries that you can adjust based on what feels authentic in each moment. Sexual boundaries aren't just about saying no to unwanted sexual experiences. They're about saying yes only to sexual experiences that genuinely excite and fulfill you. This means learning to distinguish between sexual desire, driven by genuine attraction, and sexual compliance driven by fear of rejection. When you have strong sexual boundaries, you become more attractive because your sexual energy is authentic rather than desperate. People can sense when your sexual interest comes from genuine desire versus when it comes from need or fear. When you break free from trauma-bonded sexuality, everything about your romantic and sexual experience transforms. Instead of being attracted to people who hurt you, you develop what Schopenhauer called conscious attraction, desire based on actual compatibility rather than familial dysfunction. Your sexual experiences become more satisfying because you're present during them instead of dissociated. You can ask for what you want because you're not terrified of rejection. You can enjoy your partner's pleasure without needing to control it. Most importantly, you stop needing sex or romantic relationships to feel complete. This creates what Schopenhauer identified as the ultimate paradox. The less you need love and sex, the more attractive you become to potential partners. When you achieve what Schopenhauer called erotic sovereignty, you relate to sexuality and relationships from a place of choice rather than compulsion. You can enjoy intimate connection without being enslaved by it. You can experience sexual desire without being controlled by it. This doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means developing the capacity to love and desire from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. Instead of seeking someone to complete you, you seek someone to share your completeness with. People with erotic sovereignty are magnetically attractive because they don't need validation. They don't play games, and they don't try to control others through sex or withholding sex. Their sexual energy comes from genuine desire rather than from trauma or desperation. Nothing is more sexually attractive than someone who doesn't need you to feel whole. When you've healed your trauma enough to be genuinely happy alone, people are drawn to your energy because it's not needy or desperate. This creates what Schopenhauer called erotic magnetism, natural sexual attraction that doesn't depend on manipulation, performance, or trauma bonding. People are attracted to you because being around you feels good, not because you activate their trauma patterns. When two people with healed trauma come together, they create what Schopenhauer called conscious intimacy, relationship dynamics based on choice rather than compulsion. Instead of trauma bonding, you experience genuine bonding based on shared values, compatible personalities, and mutual growth. Sexual chemistry in conscious relationships feels different. It's more grounded, more sustainable, and more satisfying long-term. Instead of the intense highs and lows of trauma-bonded relationships, you experience consistent connection and deepening intimacy over time. When you heal your own sexual and romantic trauma, you break generational patterns that might have been passed down through your family for generations. You stop unconsciously seeking partners who will recreate your parents' dysfunctional relationship dynamics. This is revolutionary because it means your children, if you have them, won't inherit your trauma patterns around love and sexuality. You become the generation that breaks the cycle. Your sexual and romantic healing is political resistance. When you're no longer controlled by trauma-bonded relationships, you can't be manipulated through fear of abandonment, sexual shame, or romantic scarcity. Industries that profit from your sexual dysfunction, porn, dating apps, the wedding industry, divorce attorneys lose their power over you when you achieve genuine sexual and romantic satisfaction. Political movements that manipulate people through gender antagonism and relationship. Fear can't control you when you've healed your own capacity for healthy intimate relationships. The ultimate paradox of Schopenhauer's sexual philosophy is that the path to the most satisfying love and sex leads through periods of solitude and celibacy. You have to heal alone before you can love authentically with another person. This goes against everything society teaches about relationships, which is why it was suppressed. Society profits from people who desperately need relationships, not from people who consciously choose them. But once you understand this paradox, you gain access to levels of sexual and romantic satisfaction that most people never experience, because they're too afraid to do the healing work that makes authentic love possible. The algorithm hides this from your feed because sexual and romantic independence threatens billion-dollar industries. This information has been suppressed for over 170 years because it's dangerous to those who profit from your relationship dysfunction and sexual trauma. Subscribe, share this video, and save it to your playlists before they classify it as adult content and make it impossible to find. They banned Schopenhauer's philosophy of love because he'd given you the master key to sexual and romantic liberation. Your relationship problems aren't personal failures, they're systematic programming. Your healing isn't self-improvement, it's revolutionary resistance. The next time someone tells you that love is supposed to be hard, or that sexual chemistry is about finding your other half, remember, they're selling you the very prison Schopenhauer mapped, the way out. Your trauma isn't your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. And that healing, that movement from compulsive sexuality to conscious sexuality, from trauma-bonded relationships to authentic love, that's the most radical thing you can do in a world that profits from your sexual and romantic suffering. Subscribe if you're ready to break free from trauma-bonded relationships and experience genuine erotic sovereignty. The revolution starts when you stop letting your wounds choose your lovers.